morning as you are coming in. Day two and the first official day of fall. So think about what this conference did. We literally have the power to change the season. We went from summer yesterday to fall today. And so we can do that with a collective action of changing the season. How can we go forward and just expound on that to change communities? Good morning, everyone. As you see, we have some people alongside with me today, but first I want to acknowledge my co-MC, Jim. Jim, how are you doing?
Man, it's good to be here today. I enjoyed, last night was the medianist night of the year. In the winter, it's the shortest night of the year, and then in the summer, it's the longest day of the year. Well, last night was like the mediumest sleep that I've had all year. It was like right in the middle. It's like perfect. I feel like I just fell into this new season with great joy.
Well, that's good. Well, I hope everybody's having a great day. I hope you all had a wonderful time yesterday. And if you went to a couple sessions, I know those who went to my sessions, they were just profoundly blown away with that great presentation by Donna and myself. No kudos or self-brag here at all. But I'm just saying, I know they were just profoundly astounded by what we had to share with them. But no, I know that in all seriousness, I know that there was a great lineup of breakout sessions yesterday. And I heard that the Monday night listening session went really well. And Jim, you had some recap on that?
It was, I got to tell you, it was absolutely stunning. Story after story after story of lives being changed, both by Getting Ahead grads, by practitioners, by facilitators. It is amazing. And then when you start looking at the representation across the country, where people are coming from, this is truly national work. Like, it's local work, and you know this, if you're doing this work, it's actually one-on-one. It's one person changing at a time. But now you're connected in a web with national stories taking place in places you'll never go, with people you'll never meet, but it's the same story that you're working in. I was absolutely blessed last night. There were so many good stories, very encouraging. Highly encouraged in future conventions that you cut out some time for that. Bring a box of Kleenex, okay? Just bring a little box of tissues. I had to have my tissue with me. I was wiping my eyes away, but wow, amazing, amazing stories last night.
And isn't that kind of like the essence of this? That's one of the powerful pieces, especially in a time like this. I remember last year's specifically, where it's good to hear good news, especially in this day and age and this time frame that we're living in right now. The good news of overcoming and triumphing and hearing people have changed lives, hearing communities come together, hearing people have aha moments. And so if you never had a chance to go to one of these first night listening sessions, the next year I definitely think you should make time for it, to make sure you block out time just so that you're encouraged and you come out knowing that there's good going on. Even in the midst of some craziness around the world, sometimes there's good happening. And so we just encourage each other by sharing those stories. And a special thank you for those who took the courage to be transparent and vulnerable in those spaces, to share their stories, to inspire others. So a special shout out to those individuals yesterday as well. So Jim, I'm looking at my screen here, and I know that we're not the best looking people in the world, but then there's someone else on the screen here who's just illuminating and radiating on the screen to my right. I don't know if I look this way, I'm looking at that screen. I don't know which way you're looking, if you look, but
yeah,
who do you see on the screen?
I'm looking at you, and I wish Ruby was in the middle. I got you in the middle. Like, it's okay, but
well, you got to keep the sweetness in the central, and then you get, that's all it is. No, we have Ruby Payne on the line this morning with us, who's going to be giving us her nuggets of wisdom like she always does. I've had the pleasure of working with Ruby now for a number of years, and my first introduction to AHA went all the way back to about 2007 when I was working in social work in Wichita, Kansas, and she did the Bridges Out of Poverty. And I remember that presentation and held that book from that time forward. And then fast forward my moving in life to Houston, Texas, and had the great fortune of running back and getting reunited with Ruby. So delighted that I've been able to work alongside her, work with her with these things. I really believe in the work that she's doing and the change lives, and we talk about that quite often. privately about just the work and the change and impact that it has. So I'm so glad to see Ruby this morning. Jim, you have anything to say?
Well, I want to kick off by saying that I was paying attention yesterday. I was actually paying attention. You'll notice I dressed in a black shirt. You know, Angel said if you paint it black and you make tactical decisions, people will pay attention. He might have been referring to law enforcement, but I made some tactical decisions this morning. So I want to show you. Look, I got my lumberjack shirt because it's fall, and it seems like lumberjacking is like fall. We ought to be in lumberjack season. But I also brought some fall flowers for Ruby because, like,
Oh wow!
yeah,
Oh wow!
yeah, some mums. Like she's sort of all of our mum, right? Like after all these years, she's sort of our mum, and so here are some mums for Ruby. Ruby, I probably throw these in the recycling when I'm done. I'm not going to send them to you. Run down to Lowe's, they have them on sale. Anyway, and I also brought a basket of apples to represent our fall season. So apples are the fruit of the work that we're doing. And you know, I got to say my own story. I have a story of meeting Ruby for the first time that, of course, she won't remember because she met millions of people through the years. But when I was sort of getting addicted to this work and to Ruby, I was still working just as a school psychologist and doing framework. And I went to, I actually drove across I went to the far coast of Iowa. I'm on the east coast of Iowa, and at the west coast of Iowa is a different river. We just got rivers on each side. It's not really oceans, but we call them coast. And I went to Omaha, Nebraska, and I was in a session. And Ruby's up there doing the things she does. And she goes, I need a volunteer to role play this next thing. And I'm like, I want to be on stage with Ruby Payne. So like I just jumped up and I ran up there and I played an 8th grade behavior disordered boy. And the only good news is I didn't really have to act. It was like I already knew how to be disruptive and non-compliant and do whatever I want. It was really fun. But after that, or about the same time, is when I first got certified in framework, and it changed my life. It totally took me from a person who was well-intentioned but didn't understand the people that most needed what I had to offer. That's the thing that's come to me the most. It's like the people that need me the most need me to understand the most. And what I really need to understand is not them. I need to understand me. I need to understand my own perceptions, my own biases, my own assumptions about the things like the hidden rules and resources. So it really changed my life. It made me better at what I did, although I was already obviously really good. But it made me better at what I did, and it made me more relaxed. I realized that if I was curious about people, instead of just trying to help them, that would be my dog, my apologies. If I was curious about people, instead of just stepping in to try to help, I became more effective as a school psychologist and as a partner in teaching. I'm gonna have to go take care of my dog now.
I'll take that. I'll take over for you. So, you know, one thing I want to do before we get started for today's session is I'm a big believer in give people praise while they're there in the presence of you. Don't wait till afterwards. And so if you've enjoyed this conference and if you enjoyed the breakout sessions, just in the question box, just say thank you, how good of a job this has been. Thanks to Ruby for, you know, bringing this all together year in, year out. So just put in the question box how this has been beneficial for you today, and what you're looking forward to and how you're going to apply this, so we can just kind of share, because I'm a big believer. We don't want to give the thanks after someone's done. We want to give them while they're in the midst of our presence. And also, I would like to say this is a wonderful time, because I know there's some attendees who are, you know, like the coffee snobs. You know how someone's like, the conference was good, but the coffee was just kind of cold. Well, if the coffee was cold today or yesterday, guess what? We didn't make it. You did. If the food got cold during your presentation and breakout, we didn't make it. You did. So for those people, I'm sure there's always that one or two who always wants to make the comment about something that had nothing to do directly with the conference. You know, the air quality was messed up, or it was too bright in my room, and we can't control that. But anyway, I want to look at some of these comments coming in. Thank you. It's been amazing. Thank you. It's been wonderful. This was my first time at AHA training. I loved it. Thank you so much. Enjoyed every minute. Thank you, Ruby. This is the first conference, and I appreciate having the opportunity to share this space. Coaching breakout sessions with Susie. Shout out to Susie. Was wonderful and amazing. Excellent conference. This has helped me. Life-changing, rejuvenated. Miss seeing everybody in person, but this was a great time. Thank you, Ruby, and the whole team. So yeah, keep pouring them in. Make Ruby feel great before she gives us her wonderful presentation, because like I said, I want to make sure we give out the kudos now. Let's rain and throw the flowers at Ruby now, so she sees the love. The love, Ruby. Here comes the love from all over the world.
I gotta say, you're giving credit to the wrong person. You gotta give credit to Lynn and Ruth and Mariah and Elizabeth and Ben and you and Jim. And I mean, it wouldn't have happened without them. You know, they have a genius for organization I don't have, you know. I gotta give credit where it belongs. Anyway, they did a great job.
Good. And I agree 100%, Ruby. This is a shout out to the team. We, behind this, or what I say, the works in the shadows, the people you hardly never see, that's making sure that we look good on camera, that we're on camera at the right time, that there's no mistakes, that can edit out any bloopers in real time. So this is great, and thank you for the team as well. And I think we're getting ready to close, Ruby, for you to take the stage and present your wisdom to us as we close out this conference.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you both.
You're welcome.
Well, first of all, let me say again, a huge thank you to the team. We would never have been able to do it without them. They made it happen. I'm so excited about that and all they've been able to do. So thank you so much. And we concentrate so much on stories and why stories are so critical. So I want to talk about the stories in the time of COVID. And one of the things is that the universe, one of my favorite quotes is, the universe is made up of stories, not of atoms. And so I've been doing a lot of reading on the brain and the hippocampus of the brain and how that literally impacts how we know who we are. And just a little quick and dirty lesson here about your brain. Your brain is about the size of your hands. I know that's not real comforting. And it's got two hemispheres, okay, right and left. And it's about 3 pounds. It's about the consistency of soft butter. But if you look at one side of your brain, one hemisphere, both sides have what is called a brain stem. And all emotional well-being is based in two things, safety and belonging. So if your safety or your belonging gets upset, then you're going to be upset. And that COVID has really had the ability to do that. And your thumb is your amygdala. It's your emotional center of your brain. It's structured by the time you're 3, heavily structured. It gets restructured in adolescence. But surrounding it is something called a hippocampus. And what your hippocampus does is it stores the story of who you are. One of the most interesting researchers is a woman named Katie McLean. And she says that stories and long-term memories are about identity development. That identity is actually constructed. It does not arise. It's constructed through our environment, and in particular, the story we make about ourselves. And most importantly, it's not constructed alone. We have co-authors. And one of the most interesting things about her model is this, that you have this identity you kind of put together for yourself. And if you had siblings, everybody's got a different story about who they are. And our narrative identity, who we are, is mixed into our personal stories, but it's mixed in with other people's stories that they tell about us. And then it's mixed into our cultural stories, the stories we are told about who we are. And in these stories, then, we become co-authored. And so I want to give you a couple, 2 or 3 ideas for you during COVID, because what COVID has done is it has literally disrupted people's stories. And what we know in the hard research basically is that if you can't keep a coherent story of who you are, basically it leads to depression, it leads to emotional illness, it leads to PTSD. So one of the things that you want is, as we go through COVID, keep a story of who you are. So I want to show you, if we might, a trick I've been doing to myself during COVID. And several of you know this visual storyboard, but I want to, this is mine. And I want to show you, if you do this, 2 or 3 things that I've got on mine for your consideration, okay? The thing about this is that you want to focus on the end result and not the problem. And COVID is a problem, but COVID's not going to be here forever. So every morning I meditate and pray, but every morning for about 10 minutes, I engage in this little game. It's a little fantasy, if you will, of what my life's going to be like after COVID, because COVID's not going to be forever. And so I have things on my list, things that I think about and dwell on. What do I want the end result to be? Even though I'm not happy in the right now, always, what is the end result I want? And so you'll see what's on my list. And one of the things I'm going to point out here is this thing about, I like to be able to give $1 billion to God's causes, to charity, to work. And that's an audacious, hairy, audacious goal, all right? And the first time I wrote that down, I laughed out loud. But then I thought this, if you don't ask, you'll never get there. The bottom line is you might not get all the way there, but you're going to get a lot further than if you put a small goal. One of the things is put out there what you want. If you were queen or king of the universe, what would that be? Put it out there. I mean, it does no harm. And so I'll have a 10-minute fantasy every morning about my future story, the end result. And the other thing you want to have in there is what your talent and skill is. What do you bring to the situation that is unique to you? Like, what is it, your gift that you're supposed to share? What is that? One of the things I read this story, and I just thought it was fascinating. There was a professional golfer who was playing with one of the kings in Saudi Arabia. And the king was so grateful that the professional golfer had agreed to play with him, that he kept saying to him, what is a gift I can give to you? And the golfer kept saying, hey, you know, you've given me this opportunity to play with you, get to know you. I'm okay, really. Well, the king persisted. He said, really, I want to give you something. So finally, the professional golfer said, well, why don't you give me a golf club? Well, about 3 days later, a messenger came to his door, knocked, and gave him a leather, it was a leather binder that was about a foot in length. And he thought, ooh, that's an interesting golf club. He opened it up, and on the inside was a deed for 100 acres of land, a golf course, and a golf club. The bottom line is we often ask too little. And you will never reach your goals if you don't ask for the sky. And so part of the deal is it doesn't hurt anybody. It allows you a fantasy, and it allows you to say, when this is over, what is the end result I want? And then I couple it with the next thing, which is a coherent internal story. And one of the things that is here for you that you can download as a handout is, can you keep a coherent story about who you are before, during, and after, and in different settings? So you have to be able to keep a coherent story over time and over different settings. So one of the things that I'm going to show you, because it's how you maintain your stability, it's how you maintain your anchor tree status that we talked about last night. So here's an activity for you to do if you wish. But I did this for myself again. Who was I before COVID? Who am I during COVID? And who will who have I moved to now? Okay, and COVID will eventually go away, or be manageable. So the bottom line is this: I was reading a lot. I was on airplanes a lot, praying a lot, doing motorcycle trips with my husband. My suitcase was my best friend. I was presenting, staying at a lot of hotels, working on my computer writing, and I go to London twice a year to see my son. During COVID, I'm in the grocery store looking for toilet paper, okay? I'm learning how to cook, and I'm happy to report I can do 5 meals now, 5 recipes, walking a lot, doing a lot of online learning, still praying a lot, spending a lot of time with cookbooks, okay? Hunting for masks, okay? Now, okay, who am I? Well, I'm doing some in-person presenting, a lot of online. I can go fishing, okay? Because you can socially distance there. Still writing, still praying, but what you're looking for is the continuity. And then the other thing you're looking for is this: how am I making gains toward that future story? What am I doing that's making gains toward that future story? Even though it's muted, even though I'm not going there as fast as I want, even though I've kind of been grounded for a while, what does that look like? And then you ask yourself this question: what has remained the same? Okay. How are you the same now, and how are you a different person? Well, it has certainly made me value personal relationships a lot more, simply because you can't have them. So I realized I'd gotten so buried in work that I had lost touch with people. Okay. And what did you learn from this? Okay, well, I've learned a lot about myself. And the thing of it is it has been a learning opportunity. And then you ask yourself this: McLean found in her research that one of the things that determines your well-being is the extent to which you have positive to negative stories. Okay, so can you take a negative story and make it a positive? What did you learn out of that? How are you stronger now because of it? How did it shift your values? Okay, and your autobiographical reasoning. Does the story have meaning? I think one of the hardest things for COVID is that it's hard to make meaning out of it. There's this huge why, okay? But the bottom line is the larger things is, how will I fit this into my story so it has value? What value did it bring to me? And do our stories make sense over time? One of the most interesting studies I read was this psychiatrist who was working with a woman. She was in her early 30s, and she brought in all these notebooks of newspaper clippings of her life. Well, as he finally drilled down, he realized she made up a story of who she was. None of that had happened to her. In fact, she spent all her time alone. And so she had made a fabricated story of who she was. Okay. So do our stories make sense? And for example, one of the things, I've always been curious, okay? And so that is something that has stayed with me across time, that curiosity. And so everyone has wounds. The question is, do your wounds define you, okay? Or do they allow you to learn? Can you heal from that? Can you make it a part of you and move on? How many of you know somebody who is bitter and angry? Okay, I bet all of you do. Okay, well, they have a wound that defines them. How many of you know somebody got divorced 20 years ago and they're still angry about it? It defines them. The question is, can you heal it and move on? So I want to give you a couple techniques here as we start talking about stories. I gave you a technique for a future story. And ask for the moon, literally, ask for it. I am old enough to remember when people started talking about going to the moon. And the thing is, how many people just laughed about that? That's hilarious. That will never happen. Well, it did. If you don't envision it, it can't happen. So one of the things is you want to look at the bigger story. Then I gave you a way to get a coherent story over COVID. And now I want to give you another tool that I just love. It's called a metaphor story. And what a metaphor story does is it allows you to have another way to think about your life. Metaphor stories are held in the subconscious and they direct our behavior even though we don't know we have them. Like the story I told you of the king and the golfer. That is a metaphor story because it doesn't use proper names and it teaches, has a message to it. They are wonderful. And it used to be that we had a lot more of them in circulation than we do now. If you will note, in the Bible, Jesus used parables a lot, and parables are metaphor stories. But there's a technique you can use, and I like to use it with children. You can use it with adults as well. But it's got two phases to it. One, two rules: never use proper names, and number two, always end on a positive note. And I've even used it on myself, you know, but it goes like this. A friend of mine, and this will be an adult example and you'll understand it. A friend of mine, he was a consultant and his job was to work with school principals to help to get them to change. And one of the problems was he had 2 or 3 of them that were very resistant to change. So he went to one of them and he said, one of the ones that was most resistive, and he said, I was wondering, he said, you know, my job is to help schools become more innovative. And he said, I was wondering if I told you a story of something I'm finding right now that you would help me understand it. And the principal said, sure, I will. And it was the very principle he was trying to figure out. He said, well, you know, my job. And one of the things, I'll go see a principal and I'll suggest 2 or 3 things for them to consider. And they'll say, no way, I'm not even going to do it. He said, they don't even consider it. He said, can you tell me why they might be thinking that? And immediately the guy said, because they don't want to upset their teachers. And then he said to the principal, he said, well, I was wondering if I suggested for the teachers to go out and see this in another building, a couple teachers, do you think that principal might consider that? And the guy said, well, yeah, I would. And then they started through 3 or more things, and eventually he was able to find some solutions that would work with that. One of the things is that metaphor stories help you get at the story that's in the subconscious. I'll give you another example. You can use it to figure out coping. Like when my son was in the 2nd grade, his behavior went berserk, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. So I called his teacher, and she said, yeah, his behavior is berserk. So I thought, geez. So the only thing I could think that was bothering him was that we were talking about moving from Illinois back to Texas. We had moved from Texas to Illinois, and we were talking about moving back. So one night, he hated to go to bed. One night I said to him, hey, will you help me? You don't have to go to bed right now. Will you help me tell a story? He said, no, that story's about me and I know it and I'm not going to help. Well, dang, okay. So I said, oh, come on. He loved Roadrunners. I said, come on, let's make a Roadrunner story. He said, okay. I said, there was a Roadrunner mom, a Roadrunner dad, a Roadrunner dog, a Roadrunner boy. And I said, the Roadrunners were talking about moving back to Texas. I said, how does the dog Roadrunner feel about that? He said to me, oh, he thinks he can get a bone anywhere. I said, how does Dad Roadrunner feel about that? He'll do whatever Mom wants. He was getting angrier. I said, so how does Mom Roadrunner feel about it? It's her idea. I said, how does the boy Roadrunner feel about it? He hates it. He doesn't know how he'll ever have any friends. I said, well, didn't the boy get friends when he moved from Texas to Illinois? He said, yeah, not because he liked it. I said, did the boy share his toys with other kids? Yeah, but not because he wanted to. Did he play on the playground with them? Yes, but not because he liked it. Did he visit them over to play? Yeah, but it wasn't any fun. So you always end on a positive note. So I ended the story this way. So the boy knew that whether he moved or not, he'd be okay. He knew that he'd moved once before and made friends. He knew he could move again and make friends. So the boy knew whatever happened, he'd be okay. And the next day, his behavior went back to normal. It is a way. I've even done it to myself. You know, I've been going, once upon a time, there was a woman and this woman did this and da, da, da. It's kind of a hilarious way to work stuff out, but it kind of helps you understand what's in your subconscious. One other technique I want to give you, which has been a wonderful technique, and it comes from Mario Martinez's book, and it's called Swapping a Toxic Co-Author. One of the things is that if you've come out of trauma or you've come out of abuse, you've had toxic co-authors. You've had people who helped author who you are that were toxic for you. And one of the things is that you can actually change that. And what you do is you visualize yourself in a setting that was either painful for you or did not go well. And so you see yourself in that space with those people, okay? Who's in there with you? Were they supportive of you or not? And then one of the things you find is you go and you say to yourself, who is somebody who truly loves me, okay? And what you do is you swap out the people in the room with the people who love you, okay, and are truly operating in your best interest. Like a friend of mine, he had a very difficult father, and his father was just vicious over his grades in school if they weren't straight A's. And so I said to him, well, and it stored in his memory, and because it happened in middle school, and I said, so hey, did you have anybody who really loved you during that time that thought you were just fabulous? He said, yeah, I had a teacher in high school. I said, well, swap your dad out for that teacher. I said, now show your report card to this teacher that was so supportive of you. And what does he say? He said, well, he just kind of laughed. He said, it's okay. You know, you got to be, next time you can shoot for an A. In other words, the bottom line is it totally took the sting out of it. So you replay the incident with the new person. And one of the things I've done it to myself, one of the things you understand right off the bat is that a lot of times the person in the room with you did not have your best interests at heart. And when you swap out, it's all of a sudden it's like, oh wow, that was a no-brainer. So it's called swapping toxic co-authors, swapping.
The wisest person I ever met.
Now I want to show you a video here because it's a video and you'll see where we got. I want to leave you with this story. The story's funny, and you also can get this same story online and the website's at the end of the story. But it combines all the things we've talked about with stories, okay? How you deal with adverse circumstances, how you stick with your future story in spite of everything, how you deal with the parts of life that were not part of your future story but are there. And I love this video, and I have one closing comment at the end of it.
The wisest person I ever met in my life, a third grade dropout. Wisest and dropout in the same sentence is rather oxymoronic, like jumbo shrimp. Mm-hmm. Like fun run, ain't nothing fun about it. Like Microsoft Works, y'all don't hear me. I used to say like country music, but I've lived in Texas so long, I love country music now. Yeah. I hunt, I fish, I have cowboy boots and cowboy. Y'all, I'm a black neck redneck. Do you hear what I'm saying? No longer oxymoronic for me to say country music. And it's not oxymoronic for me to say third grade and dropout. That third grade dropout, the wisest person I ever met in my life, who taught me to combine knowledge and wisdom to make an impact, was my father. A simple cook. Wisest man I ever met in my life. Just a simple cook. Left school in the 3rd grade to help out on the family farm, but just because he left school doesn't mean his education stopped. Mark Twain once said, I've never allowed my schooling to get in the way of my education. My father taught himself how to read, taught himself how to write, decided in the midst of Jim Crowism, as America was breathing the last gasp of the Civil War, my father decided he was going to stand and be a man. Not a black man, not a brown man, not a white man, but a man. He literally challenged himself to be the best that he could all the days of his life. I have 4 degrees. My brother is a judge. We're not the smartest ones in our family. It's a 3rd grade dropout daddy. A 3rd grade dropout daddy who was quoting Michelangelo, saying to us boys, I won't have a problem if you aim high and miss, but I'm going to have a real issue if you aim low and hit. A country mother quoting Henry Ford, saying if you think you can or if you think you can't, you're right. I learned that from a 3rd grade drop. Simple lessons. Lessons like these. Son, you'd rather be an hour early than a minute late. We never knew what time it was at my house because the clocks were always ahead. My mother said for nearly 30 years, my father left the house at 3:45 in the morning. One day she asked him, why, Daddy? He said, maybe one of my boys will catch me in the act of excellence. I want to share 2 things with you. Aristotle said, you are what you repeatedly do. Therefore, excellence ought to be a habit, not an act. Don't ever forget that. I know you're tough, but always remember to be kind. Always. Don't ever forget that. Never embarrass mama. Yeah. If mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. If daddy ain't happy, don't nobody care. But I'm trying to tell you. Next lesson. Lesson from a cook over there in the galley. Son, make sure your servant's towel is bigger than your ego. Ego is the anesthesia that deadens the pain of stupidity. Y'all might have a relative in mind you want to send that to. Let me say it again. Ego is the anesthesia that deadens the pain of stupidity. Pride is the burden of a foolish person. John Wooden coached basketball at UCLA for a living, but his calling was to impact people. And with all those national championships, guess what he was found doing in the middle of the week? Going into the cupboard, grabbing a broom, and sweeping his own gym floor. You want to make an impact? Find your broom. Every day of your life, you find your broom. You grow your influence that way. That way, you're attracting people so that you can impact them. Final lesson. Son, you're going to do a job. Do it right. I've always been told how average I can be. Always been criticized about being average. But I want to tell you something. I stand here before you, before all of these people, not listening to those words, but telling myself every single day to shoot for the stars, to be the best that I can be. Good enough isn't good enough if it can be better. And better isn't good enough if it can be best. Let me close with a very personal story that I think will bring all this into focus. Wisdom will come from forces. A lot of times we fail. When you hit rock bottom, remember this. While you're struggling, rock bottom can also be a great foundation on which to build and on which to grow. I'm not worried that you'll be successful. I'm worried that you won't fail from time to time. Person that picks up on the canvas and keeps growing, that's the person that will continue to grow their influence. Back in the 70s, to help me make this point, let me introduce you to someone. I met the finest woman I'd ever met in my life. Back in my day, we'd have called her a brick house. This woman was the finest woman I'd ever seen in my life. There's just one little problem. Back then, ladies didn't like big old linemen. The blind side hadn't come out. They like quarterbacks and running backs. We're at this dance, and I find out her name is Trina Williams from Lompoc, California. And we were all dancing, and we're just excited. And I decided in the middle of dancing with her that I would ask her for her phone number. Trina was the first one. Trina was the only woman in college who gave me her real telephone number. The next day, we walked to Baskin & Robbins ice cream parlor. My friends couldn't believe it. This has been 40 years ago, and my friends still can't believe it. We go on a second date, and a third date, and a fourth date. We drive from Chico to Vallejo so that she could meet my parents. My father meets her. My daddy, my hero, he meets her, pulls me to the side and says, is she psycho? But anyway, we go together for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. By now, Trina's a senior in college. I'm still a freshman, but I'm working some things out. I'm so glad I graduated in 4 terms. Nixon, Ford, Carter, Reagan. So now it's time to propose. So I talked to her girlfriends, and it's California. It's in the 70s, so it has to be outside. Have to have a candle, and have to have, you know, some chocolate. Listen, I'm from the hood. I had a bottle of Boone's Farm wine. That's what I had. She said yes. That was the key. I married the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen in my life. Y'all ever been to a wedding, and even before the wedding starts, you hear this? How in the world? And it was coming from my side of the family. We get married, we have a few children, our lives are great. One day, Trina finds a lump in her left breast. Breast cancer. 6 years after that diagnosis, me and my 2 little boys walked up to mommy's casket. And for 2 years, my heart didn't beat. If it wasn't for my faith in God, I wouldn't be standing here today. If it wasn't for those 2 little boys, there would have been no reason for which to go on. I was completely lost. That was rock bottom. You know what sustained me? The wisdom of a 3rd grade dropout. The wisdom of a simple cook. We're at the casket. I'd never seen my dad cry. But this time I saw my dad cry. That was his daughter. It was his daughter, not his daughter-in-law. And I'm right behind my father, about to see her for the last time on this earth. And my father shared 3 words with me that changed my life right there at the casket. It would be the last lesson. He said, son, just stand. You keep standing. You keep standing, no matter how rough the sea, you keep standing. And I'm not talking about just water. You keep standing. No matter what, you don't give up. And as clearly as I'm talking to you today, these were some of her last words to me. She looked me in the eye and she said, it doesn't matter to me any longer how long I live. What matters to me most is how I live. I ask y'all one question, a question that I was asked all my life by a 3rd grade dropout. How you living? How you living? Every day, ask yourself that question, how you living? Here's what a cook would suggest you to live this way. That you would not judge, that you would show up early, that you'd be kind, that you make sure that that servant's count is huge and used. That if you're going to do something, you do it the right way. That cook would tell you this, that it's never wrong to do the right thing. That how you do anything is how you do everything. And in that way, you will grow your influence to make an impact. And that way, you will honor all those who have gone before you, who have invested in you. Look in those unlikeliest places for wisdom. Enhance your life every day by seeking that wisdom and asking yourself every night, how am I living? May God richly bless you. Thank you.
So with our words and deeds, we can leave something beautiful behind in the lives of others. Thank you so much for being with us for this conference. And we would like you to do an evaluation if you don't mind. And we would love to see you next year in San Antonio. Thank you for the impact that you make.
Oh, Ruby, man, that was stunning. I put my tissues right back behind the computer so you can't see them, but the concrete tools, the things, I'm drawing pictures over here of stuff that I can see that I need to do. Thinking of people that I can share this with and help them as well. And then that video is just incredible. I really appreciate the wisdom and the encouragement. We're in a difficult time, there's a lot of things to maybe throw up your hands and say, well, I'm just going to go into a holding pattern until maybe things clarify. Well, I think that sometimes we can get stuck in that holding pattern. This really inspires me to be asking for the moon, thinking about the big things, and looking forward. So thank you so much.
And thank you, Jim.
Yeah, I think it was great. The simple kind of synopsis I got out of it is, if not you, then who? And if not now, then when? And so, really being reflective on your strengths, your goals, your desires. This is the time, in the midst of surging changes in weather and whatever the case may be, things get disrupted, but this is a time to establish a new foundation for yourself if you haven't done so. And I think, both your message and the video really captures that understanding of how are we living in this time? How are we progressing, and how are we building the foundation for the legacy that we want to leave for those to follow after us? So very good message. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well,
so
we
with
come to the end.
Yeah, we're at the end. I mean, Jim, we did not mess up. I think we did great.
I didn't have a broom, but I went and got my rake so we can clean up because it's fall. So we got to get the leaves all raked up here. So let's clean this baby up and send these people on their way.
I thought you were referring to like the NBA playoffs and you was predicting a sweep or something. I was like, not in Denver. We're in this. We're going to win game 3. But I thought you was trying to make a joke. No, but no, yeah. Let's wrap up. First and foremost, it was great to be with you these past couple of days, Jim. Like always, I think we provided an excellent emceeing this display today. I don't think there was any hiccups. Kudos to us. I think we should venture out for our own national broadcast, maybe a podcast as well. I think people. What do you think?
If we could get maybe someone to write a check for that, then
Yeah.
Hey,
Ruby, I'm gonna shoot for the stars. I'm shooting for the stars right now, Ruby.
That's it. We're gonna be famous podcasters.
Let that $1 billion come this way. No, in all seriousness.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, we'll give Ruby the $1 billion. She can give it away.
There you go. That's what I took from that lesson. This is the time to ask on the national stage. But anyway, no, serious thing. If you, as we wrap up, if there were sessions, if you're realizing like, wow, there was a lot of good sessions and I only had time to go to a couple of them, please visit the website. We're going to drop that into the question or chat function now. So you can see the website about looking at past breakout sessions. All the breakout sessions were recorded, number one. Number two, thank you for all the comments that you put into the question box today to really share your gratitude and thanks and reflection on this. And as you heard, Ruby was mentioning that next year's conference will be back in San Antonio, but the dates is going to be September 19th through the 21st. So mark your calendars now for the 2021 National Conference in San Antonio, Texas. September 19th through the 21st. And if you liked what we were doing today virtually, imagine how it is when we're all together with the collective energy of bodies in the room and dialogue and conversation during and after the conferences for those 2 days as well. So I once again thank you all for joining us, and thank you all for being attentive throughout these 2 times. Hopefully you've learned something more about yourself, what you need to do to edify yourself, but also how you can edify your community, your family, and those that you serve every single day. Jim, you get the closing words.
Yeah, well, the couple things about next year. You might not know this, but I'm very excited about next year's conference. It starts on September 19th, which happens to coincide with International Talk Like a Pirate.
Jim, you're cutting out.
I'm cutting out. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I don't know if you didn't pay your bill, but something's timing up on your side over there, buddy.
Oh, let me try one more time. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah.
All right. So next year, September 19th is International Talk Like a Pirate Day. So the first day of next year's conference, we're in the working stages of having a pirate-themed opening gathering. I made that up.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I'll close with this.
Okay.
Actually, I heard on the radio today that September 22nd, today is National Voter Registration Day. And just want to encourage those of you that, you know, if for whatever reason, I imagine everybody on this call is registered, and we're not going to sit here and tell you who to vote for. We're just going to say, be involved and know what's going on. Get connected with people who are involved in that process, because they are a part of the solution. I encourage those of you, I've noticed in the chat, there's a number of people, this is kind of your first exposure to AHA, your first exposure to Bridges. Visit the website, get acquainted, check out the social media, stay connected. Yeah, we're all doing individual local work, but you're a part of a national conversation. And if I had a big, hairy, audacious goal, it would be that we'd be doing so much work that you wouldn't be able to go any place where people wouldn't be familiar with Bridges, wouldn't be familiar with getting ahead, wouldn't be familiar with framework, wouldn't be familiar with tactical communication, because we're making a difference. So get involved, keep doing good work, believe that it matters in the midst of a time where it seems like nothing's moving, believe that it matters. And we'll be back with you next year to hear the stories.
Signing off.
Man.
Have a good day. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Have a great day, everybody.
I'm good, Lynn.
All right, closing out.
Thank you.